can you imagine being so horrible at pitching, but so determined you push through? Only a few short years later, your company gets acquired by Amazon.
Oh my God. Episode 191, my friend, and it's all about sales today. I'm particularly excited because it's not just about sales, but we're going to narrow down even a little bit deeper, at least in some of the topics, to talk about pitching, which is, of course, as you well know, my sweet spot.
I forget who said it. Somebody comment right in and tell us. What's the quote? At first, nothing happens until somebody sells something.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
So, like, if you think about it, you can have an idea, but it's just an idea. It's not a business.
Yeah.
But you can't deliver good products or services until somebody sells something, or rather, somebody buys something.
People go, I'm a business owner. I have a company. How much have you made? Well, I haven't sold anything yet.
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
You're not a business owner.
Here's another quote, by the way, that it's weird that we're actually doing quotes of the week, and we haven't even got to the quote of the week yet. And this isn't our quote, but here's another one that I love, where people talk about it practically sells itself. My response to that is always, no, it doesn't. Nothing sells itself, right? And my line when people say, oh, this just sells itself, I always say, really? Toilet paper has TV commercials.
Right.
Right? You know, it's like, this is a product that we all need, and there's still TV commercials convincing us to buy a product to wipe our butts.
Well, here's an interesting side point. If you've ever read Elon Musk's autobiography, people say, what's Elon Musk great at? And people talk about all the things, and Tesla and SpaceX and all that kind of stuff. And they say, oh, Teslas, they sell themselves because they're the best product, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But what people miss is selling applies everywhere. It's not just getting customers, it's also raising the money.
Yeah.
And actually, from reading that biography, where I think Elon's, I don't want to say strongest, I'm going to say most underrated, is in his ability to raise money.
Yeah.
He's able to sell investors on giving him the money because he has the big vision and persuade them that it's going to work. Now, clearly, some people are listening to this and going, oh, no, it's because, he's got his 20-hour work days and he's relentless and he'd rather die. And
all that's true.
Oh, it's true.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't get him the money by default.
Yes.
The fact is, I mean, if you look at the Twitter acquisition, I forget what percentage, but ultimately it was a leveraged buyout, and the vast majority of that 42 billion was financed.
Yep.
And he had to persuade them to lend him the money. Right? So don't be naive. Don't think that just because he's the richest man in the world, the banks just went, yep, okay, we'll give you the money.
Hey, I got a question.
He had to raise it.
Your opinion, what is a better way to fund a company? Raising money through investors or sales? What do you think?
It feels like a loaded question.
I don't necessarily know that I have an opinion. I always say, hey, nothing's better than raising money than sales, but I don't know that that's necessarily true either.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I'll give you the right answer, and then I'll give you the answer everybody wants to hear. Yeah. So the right answer is it depends on the business model and what you need. Some monies need that much capital, or they're never going to succeed. Tesla, SpaceX, they were never going to succeed.
Amazon,
correct,
right?
without significant
they
backing.
could never have sold themselves into scale.
So the sale they had to make first was to investors to raise the money to do it. However, for most small businesses, service-side small businesses, you're better off self-funding. And ultimately, in a weird twist, if they were mutually exclusive, you can either be good at selling to investors or good at selling to the marketplace. But no, you'd say sell to the market. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to go and raise a load of money from investors and then fail to sell your product.
Be able to sell?
The company's going to fail, and then you've got to go back out to the investors and your reputation. So if you had to choose one, you'd choose being able to sell in the marketplace.
I'm actually thinking of somebody like that. I forget his name right now, but
be very careful.
He had WeWork. Right?
Yeah,
much better at selling to investors.
I missed my joke because I was like, the attitudes and opinions of Topher Morrison don't necessarily represent the attitudes and the opinions of Dan Bradbury Limited. Yeah, right. WeWork. But ultimately, Topher, selling is critical. It's critical. I'm just laughing to myself because for those listening, we've shot this twice because we missed up the recording. And on the first take, we were straight into news of the week and we were celebrating.
We were so proud of ourselves. 90 seconds in, we were into the news of the week. And now
it's gone to pot.
But
let's keep this take.
At least this derailment has been business related.
Which is better. Yeah. Please comment if you want to hear about more of Topher's health ailments. Because you might complain.
Hey, to be fair, the last health ailment I think was you.
Well, I was going to say, I'm going to disregard that comment. Otherwise, you're defeating my point. Because regardless of the complaints we get about Topher's health ailments, regardless of what the viewer thinks about those, I assure you, however much you have to put up with, how much crap I have to listen to that's off camera and off tape. But anyway, to the point. Back to sales.
By the way, this is going to drive me crazy, and I'm not going to edit this out, but your chair, I think the hydraulics might be broken because...
Am I bouncing up and down?
Yeah, I can't see you. You've shrunk. Can you raise your thing? Because, yeah, it looks like you're... Yeah, there we go. There, I can see your face now. All right.
You know what? I think it's deflating over time.
I think
it's like a counter to do the podcast faster. Anyway, so here's why selling's important. It's important for any business because nothing happens till you sell something. But it's even more important with where the economy's going.
Yes, which, by the way, was a beautiful segue into the news of the week.
You are most welcome. So the news of the week this week is a recession looming as the UK economy starts to shrink. So the UK economy between July and September shrunk by 0.2%. Now that's only our first quarter of GDP shrinkage, and the traditional definition of recession is 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline. That's the proper definition, not the American definition.
I think isn't that the same? Is that
no? You guys, President Biden.
Well, Well, and technically it wasn't Biden, by the way. It was our national economic.
You know what? The leader needs to take the fall.
But he did. They redefined it based upon the low levels of unemployment or something this time. Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So we used to have the definition.
They redefined it ahead of the midterms to make sure that they did better. Yeah. Anyway, so
exactly correct.
So the UK economy has shrunk, and the Bank of England is forecasting a very challenging 2-year recession. But here's the interesting thing. I forget, Topher, how much the UK GDP declined in 08-09, and the graph on screen right now doesn't go back that far. I mean, you can see there was a 20% decline in the first COVID lockdown. By the way,
if you are listening to this podcast, he's talking about a graph. You got to go to YouTube and check out the podcast visual.
And obviously
it'd be great to like
YouTube,
and subscribe.
But then if you're in the car, you need to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify as well. Just
all of it.
Other platforms are available. Yeah. Anyway, the point I want to make is when the economy shrinks, there's a couple of points, but one is that it's the weak members of the herd that get culled. They get left behind. So you need to be prepared for this recession. And a second point related to that is the declines might be small, but they affect businesses disproportionately. So on the one hand, if you're weak and underprepared, it can be it's going to be detrimental. You're not going to go down by 0.2%. You're going to lose 50% of your business, and you're going to be out of business.
Yeah.
However, inversely, plenty of companies, this is an opportunity to thrive, knock it out of the park, and often where the rubber meets the road is a competitive advantage via a business model and or more effective at making sales.
Good point. Yeah. Now, that kind of leads into a little bit of the fail of the week as well. Because if you're not adjusting your sales, if you're not forecasting for changes in the economy, buying habits, buying patterns, all of that, man, I think maybe the message would be this: unless your business is recession-proof, and it's a known recession-proof business, and you're not changing your strategies, you're headed for a very rocky road. You have to change your strategies. Fail of the week has not done so.
Yeah, the fail week this week is ITV. So ITV are facing a sharp ad sales slump. But here's the interesting stat in this article, and then we'll relate it back to small business. So the forecast is for a 1.8% decline in full-year advertising. But the relevant part over is that they have been predicting 0.3%. And
doesn't sound like a lot, right?
But a small percentage of a big number is still a big ass number.
Yes.
And so it's 5 times worse. The decline. If I'm going to do this the whole episode, it's 5 times worse than people are expecting, than ITV were expecting, which means that. So here's how it relates to you as a small business owner. If you can see what's coming, or you've got a sense, you can either build up, scale up, adapt, or cut back, hold back. You know where to invest, because what you don't want to get caught is with large overhead that you don't need, or overhead that you're incurring for sales that you don't have.
Yeah. By the way, interesting enough, I don't know if you saw this, our good friend Daniel Priestley the other day wrote what he even prefaced was going to be a controversial article that would piss people off about, which is interesting, by the way, because it's almost counterpointing a lot of what we believe, which is that this is a great opportunity, and he believes it's a great opportunity as well. But what he did do is he said, this is not a typical recession because of COVID. Most people already had cut their expenses and trimmed the fat.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot more fat to trim for small business owners this time than in previous recessions. So I thought was a really interesting take on that.
Well, I spoke with two businesses just this week, Topher, that were interested in our mastermind program. So neither are clients, but both of which are either have failed, as in their business recently has gone into administration, or they need to. I mean, the person I spoke to yesterday came and said,
yeah,
Dan,
I remember you talking about that.
Do you think this business can be saved? And I said, look, there's a good business in there, but you're going to need to restructure. My advice was you need to seek out.
How do you? Let me ask you this. I want to kind of dig a part of your brain on this one, and this is not a tangent because this is important. Because one of the things I really respect about you is you have the ability to say it like it is, and I think there's a lot of. I don't want to throw you into the category of a coach, by the way. I throw you into the category of a mentor, more so than a coach, but whatever label you want to throw on it.
I like to think of myself as a young, sexier version of Warren Buffett.
That was what I was thinking. I just didn't clearly learn how to articulate it. But that's exactly what I was thinking.
I just want to be really clear that that's not true. That was a joke said in jest. Warren, I love you. Please don't sue. Please don't sue me.
He's not suing you, but because we know he's a fan of the show. He's clearly he's giving you that look, which is, I'm not mad at you, I'm just really disappointed.
I pity you. Anyway, let's get back on track. You were going to ask a question.
Yeah. I was talking about how do you, because every business owner faces this, right? Maybe it's not with other clients, but maybe it's employees. Like, how do you find that solace in delivering the bad news, right? Like, how do you come to grips with the fact that if somebody says, do you think my business is screwed? And you're like, yes. Right? That's bold.
Right, thank you. Well, I figured out, Topher, quite a long time ago now, that there's no point beating around the bush. Right? And I want to be clear, because sometimes people say it feels a little bit like being on Britain's Got Talent. You know, it's like Simon Cowell's like, oh yeah, you're great, you're going to do good. Or no, you're rubbish, get out of here.
Yeah.
And it's not intended that way, and I've definitely been proven wrong on numerous occasions.
Sure. Yeah.
However, it's about playing the odds. And what I said to this person yesterday was, I'm not for you having a 3-year slog trying to grind this out to do the right thing when actually only to have the company fail anyway and make you personally bankrupt in the process. Because, of course, he's funding...
he was cash flowing.
He's funding his own company. And so I think it was a valid question to say, can it work? And, by the way, it ties in with this week's episode on sales, because effectively I said, look, the UK has some of the best insolvency laws in the world, and they're there to protect investors, to support the market, so there's a more orderly fallout when a company fails.
Interesting.
And so I said, look, this particular individual had X 300,000 pound in memory of debt, and it was HMRC, and it was a bank loan that wasn't personally guaranteed. And I said, look, think this through, but his company was good and it had a great sales proposition, and I believed it to be recession proof. So I said, look, and I won't say his market because it's relatively niche, and I've not asked his permission, but it was relatively niche, and I said, look, let me ask you a question. Let's call him Chris. Let's ask you a question, Chris. Do you believe that you'll do better or worse than how is this recession going to affect your marketplace?
Oh, that was a great question to ask him, for sure.
Yeah, because I wanted to see his beliefs as well. I'd already assessed and gone, this sector is going to do really well in this recession, and his particular product line is going to do better in recession. I think.
Do you think that that gave him a false sense of security then? Like it made it okay to be cash flowing the company?
Maybe, but I think typically small business owners, they're in love with their baby. They don't want to admit failure. They don't want to go down. They want to salvage it in a hero story.
Yeah.
And because I'd already thought he was going to do that, but I asked him first so I didn't prejudice his answer with my own. And he went, yeah. I said, why? He went blah, blah, blah and gave the explanation as to why. I went, that's a good point. But it's not the one I was going to make. I told him, I said, here's the reason why I think. So we both got the same conclusion, but from different routes. Now, we both could be wrong, but effectively I said, look, there is a business here and there's value here, and I think you're going to do well, but in relative terms, his revenues relative to his debt pile, and I can't say this from anything more than experience, Topher.
Yeah.
I asked some very simplistic questions about his assets and his liabilities and his ability to scale revenue and what profits that would produce off. I asked maybe half a dozen to a dozen questions. Yeah. And I just went, oh my God, like he could do really well and slog his guts out for years to pay back his creditors, which some moralistically would say that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And only at the end, there to be another little bump and he goes pop.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he's remortgaged his house and he's gone under. And I actually said, my advice to him wasn't to put it into liquidation. Mm-hmm. My advice to him was to speak to an insolvency practitioner, put it into administration, and probably do a CVA. Now,
CVA?
Yeah. So CVA is a company voluntary administration. Now, I can hear my lawyer screaming in my ears. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't play one on TV. This is purely my opinion for entertainment purposes only.
Well said.
Thank you. But it is from the beauty of being mentoring, advising, masterminding with hundreds of businesses, is you get to see a lot. So you get a lot of reference points of what's appropriate. Yeah. So effectively I said, here's my opinion. You now need to go. Because he'd already seen an IP actually. You told him he wasn't ready. And I went and I said, it was a month ago. And I went, I think they're wrong. You need a second opinion. I said, so this is my opinion. You need to get a second professional opinion. I get the appropriate legal advice, blah, 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 blah. So if the person listens to this, if you hear anything on this podcast that you like, or stories that you relate, like don't take some story and take it to be tax advice from me. That is idiotic, right? For both of us. You would take that to your accountant and discuss it and pragmatically think it through with the specifics of your situation. But where these references are helpful is sometimes your accountant or your advisor is blinkered. Or they won't come up with the idea.
Yeah, the other point of that is, just like you said, if you hear something on this show, don't take the advice as gospel or whatever. Also, quite frankly, you could just as easily say, just because you hear something from your accountant doesn't make it right. Right? Even if you hear something from your attorney, that doesn't make it right. You can get a second opinion on that one as well. Yeah.
Are all attorneys equal? Like whatever industry you're in, right? So let's say you're listening to this and you're a web designer. Okay, are all web designers the same? No, of course not. There's a massive discrepancy. Yeah. It's the same in every industry. People think, they're accountant. They know.
Attorneys can be just as flawed. Oh, hell yeah.
I can't even tell you, Topher, when people are in our mastermind, there's about a 50% fatality rate of accountants. To be clear, I don't mean...
Wait, you mean 50% of your clients that are accountants?
No. 50% of my... When people join our program, approximately 50% of our clients fire their accountants.
Yes, that's right.
And I want to be clear, fatality, I mean fire, termination, death of relationship. They're not going killing their accountant.
Yeah. No, but they get in, they discover that what they thought was a great accountant, giving them great advice, all of a sudden they're surrounded by other people. Those people start asking questions. They can't get the right answers. And it becomes pretty obvious a lot of the problem is in their accountant.
Correct.
We have derailed, but this is all business-related derailment.
Correct. Well, and actually, ironically, Topher, I was just thinking in my head, do I say this because it's contrarian to what this episode about, which is about sales?
I say yes then, because that's one thing you and I share in common, besides our amazingly handsome good looks, is that we love the contrarian viewpoint.
Yeah. So look, I suppose the shadow side of good selling. So selling is like you can have a great product, if you can't sell it, you're not making any money. End of. But the shadow side of that is everybody listening to this has been pitched and persuaded to buy something by an effective salesperson or sales process and ended up with a shitty service.
Yep.
And where it often shows up with accountants, to be specific, but this is true in a lot of industries, is head honcho accountants, really great, really good, gives good clients. He gets too many clients, so he scales and he adds staff members, and they're less effective, and then his new clients get passed off to the junior staff members, and the service or the process or a whole variety of things means that the quality goes downhill.
Yes.
So the head honcho, he or she sells,
and you see that in law, every professional service for companies.
Yeah, correct,
as well.
correct, and that's one of the things that makes professional services companies typically more difficult to scale versus product-driven companies. Okay, but product-driven companies are low margin, so it's upside and downside to each side.
Especially if the service-driven company relies on the expertise of the founder of the company, that's even harder to scale, right? I mean, you're 5 mil max, unless they make some serious shifts in their models.
Correct. Well, I mean, that's why we're here, right? That's why in this podcast. So we talk about the 6 kind of core areas of business, and we rotate through the different areas, because the fact is, you're only as strong as your weakest link.
All right, let's see how I can do. Those 6 areas are sales. I'll see if I can even do them in order. That's probably too much.
Too risky.
Too risky. All right, so here we go. Finance, sales, marketing.
Okay, so let's pause as we go. So finance, be clear. It's all the numbers. Everything's to do with numbers.
Business finance.
Sales, as in closing, getting business people to actually part with money and to commit.
And collect it.
Yeah, correct. Marketing is actually making people be interested, raising awareness. They want your product.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sales is convincing people to give you the money.
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yeah. So they're the first 3?
Yeah. I think you're interrupting me to throw me off my loop, but I've got this, my friend. All right, so we've got business finance, we got marketing, we've got sales, we've got legal, we've got
legal and
governance.
So to be clear to everybody, it's kind of like, if you are legally weak, one thing can take out your whole business. If your governance is weak, it'll bite you in the ass.
Yep.
And people dismiss this. It's underrated, it's underpraised, and it causes significant problems.
Yep. People and culture.
Yep.
And ops and systems.
There you go, buddy.
Oh, feeling pretty good about that.
So people and culture, i.e., if you don't have the right people on the bus, the right skill set, as Keith Cunningham would say, you're not going to win the NBA with a basketball team full of midgets.
Yes.
Right? And culture is how they behave. If you take a Ronaldo and put him on a mediocre football team, and don't give me hate, I am a Manchester United fan, but it brings his performance
Arsenal
down.
all the way. Arsenal all the way.
Oh my word. Anyway, it's going to bring it down. So people and culture, and then finally, okay, great, but you still need to have the systems process. The operation needs to be slick.
Yeah.
And everybody listening to this, Topher, has got 1 or 2 of those areas that they're really passionate about and good at.
Yes.
And my point is, that's not normally where the leverage is to be found. If you think about how you scale your company, eliminate the things that are holding you back.
Worst to first.
Right.
Yeah.
Worst to first. And then that's typically the one that you refuse to look at.
Yeah.
So if you hate numbers, right, that's often where the highest leverage is. And that's my belief why most businesses stay stuck at that low to mid 6-figure range, because they're financially illiterate.
Yeah, I'd buy into that as well. Which, now talk about being completely hypocritical. This is why I'm so excited about this episode, because we're talking about my sweet spot.
Right.
Especially when you get into the hero of the week.
Sales and pitching. Yeah, good. So, it ties perfectly to numbers and selling. So, hero of the week this week is Niels Hoven. So, Neil successfully got 50 high-profile angel investors, and I think he raised $3 million. And I believe it was his first raise, so it was a seed round. He went and got raised over $3 million from people such as Gary Tan, Tim Ferriss, Eric Ries, right, and some big founders as well, founders of well-known companies.
And by the way, that article goes through a pretty darn thorough step-by-step process on how he even got through to those people and how he grew that investment, which is just impressive as hell.
Yeah, so we'll link to the article because it's definitely worth a read. Because I read this and I sent it to you straight away and said, you got to read this.
You even said, you're going to love this. I'm like, yes, I do, because I love the pitch.
Right, so let me give a couple of snippets, though, because then people can get takeaways if you don't want to read the article, and then if you want to dive deep into it, you can. So, look, his problem, Neil's problem, was he wanted to raise money, but he wanted to raise it from top-tier angels because that would give credibility to because it was a tech-related thing. It was an app, okay? And the real problem was he didn't have close personal relationships. So these people weren't his mates.
They weren't in his Rolodex. He didn't have them in his phone. Yeah.
And the article goes into great detail. I mean, there's pages and pages and pages of this, but I can probably hone it down to 2 things.
Okay.
Number 1. Ready for this? This is spectacular. This is really advanced stuff. Okay? Lean in. He practiced his pitch.
Mind-blowing concept.
Right.
That's one of the biggest frustrations I see with business owners. One of the biggest, especially in the field of pitching, is they never practice their pitch.
Right.
Not just investor pitch, even just their social pitch.
They just shoot from the hip.
Yep.
And therefore it's less than optimal. And he goes into great detail how he did it, who he did it with, when he did it, the number of rounds of people. And it's a perfect example of what is the Stephen Covey thing? You know, if I've got 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 7 sharpening the axe.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think that's Stephen Covey, but it's in his book. It's from a US president, I think, but Stephen Covey quotes it in 7 Habits.
I think it's probably one of those urban legend ones where nobody can trace who actually said it originally. Anyway,
what's the meme? It's like everything's attributed to Abraham Lincoln. Like it's like don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Yeah,
who said it? Abraham
Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the point being that sharpen the axe. It's like if you've got a shitty pitch, you can go to every investor. You ain't gonna get you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah.
If you can have great quality prospects. If you've got a shitty pitch, you're gonna turn them off. They're not gonna buy.
By the way, not even just a shitty pitch. If you have an inconsistent pitch. Right? You can hit it out of the park one day, and then you could strike out the next day, and you'll produce such inconsistent results. You won't know why you hit it out of the park one day and why you bombed it the next because you just don't practice.
And in some ways, that's the worst experience, Topher.
Yeah, because you don't know. You're
right.
Why
and then the business kind of stays in kind of limbo.
Gets even worse because then they start using feedback bias, and they go, "It wasn't me. It was just the audience."
Right.
And they think that they did the right thing, but they didn't.
It was the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was you.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my favorite examples of that, actually, I'll share with you. We always share great stories about your clients. I'll share with you one of mine. Rob Hessel. He's a company called Source One Solutions. When he came to me, they were doing about maybe 1.7 mil, I think, roughly. Very little profit. And he had 3 silos in his business. And I said, let me work with this silo. I think that's the one that's the greatest potential. And all we did is we perfected his pitch, right? Got it down to where he had it memorized word for word. He took that pitch. He took it to his salespeople, made them memorize it word for word, right? I don't know if I've ever shared this with you.
No.
So within the first 30 days of practicing the new pitch and delivering it to his target market, no results. 30 to 60 days.
I didn't expect that. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. 30 to 60 days. By the way, that's a foreshadow into our book of the week.
Right.
Yeah. So 30 days, no results. 30 to 60 days, he did more in sales in that 30 days than he did the entire year before.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It gets even better. 60 to 90 days, he did more in profit in that 1 month from day 60 to day 90 than he did the previous 2 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it all boiled down to he had a consistent pitch.
Right. I was going to say that that's a great example of staying stuck in limbo where your business is kind of okay. So there's a lot of people who are listening to this. They're kind of okay.
Yeah.
But actually, the truth is, compared to what it could be,
Yep.
if you were just consistent, it's mediocre at best and shockingly bad at work. Because people forget those incremental increases, it all drops to the bottom line. All the extra GP drops to the bottom line.
I always say nothing will keep somebody, nothing will prevent a company from getting to a 10 than a strong 8.
Yeah.
Right? Because they get comfortable. right? And they're like, well, it's not bad. It's not broken. We're at a 7, we're at an 8.
Right,
it's good,
and therefore you feel safe and you don't want to lose. So time back to this article. So there were 2 parts. One was that he practiced the pitch and there's details on how he did it. But the other thing, and I'm going to do a disservice if I try and speak to this too much. He called it intro-driven fundraising. He had a very clever way of leveraging people to get to people, and then looping those when he got his first A-lister, how to loop it back in and get intros to other people on his hit list. So he was very clear, these are the investors that I want, right? So he got a list of 100, I think it was, and then he figured out how to get connections to 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Got the first sale or commitment and then looped back round, and it details how he did it in that article. And so there was the right who, right? Made it work, but he also had the right pitch.
And by the way, people listening to this or watching this podcast, what would happen if their business, that they wrote down their Dream 100? Maybe not for investors, but their Dream 100 customers. Right?
I actually think that's... I first heard this concept, the Dream 100, in a previous book of the week, Chet Holmes' Ultimate Sales Machine, which I know you love.
Yes, by the way, I finished that book. I know. Even though I think it was a couple of episodes ago, you said my biggest complaint was that I wanted an updated copy from a guy who's been dead for 20 years? Yeah. But I did finish the book, and I loved it. And what I loved about it is it gave me a quote that I get to now use with you that drives you fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I love it. Pig-headed determination.
Just shut the hell up. Tofi uses this as a justification whenever I say I don't like something or any idea. He's like, I'm going to get you with pig-headed determination.
But we can fix it with pig-headed determination.
Anyway, so with that said, smooth segue into Book of the Week.
I will tell you that this is a book which I'm very excited to talk about. Because, well, first off, it's about pitching, and that's my passion. It's called Backable by... I believe it's Sunil Gupta.
It is.
Yeah. And what a great book. And Dan, I'm going to share with you why I think this is an excellent book. Are there better books on how to pitch to investors? Yes. Are there better books on how to deliver presentations? Yes. But what I love about this book is that Sunil was wretched at his ability to pitch. Sucked. He was horrible, right? And this book is unapologetically raw about how bad he was at pitching and how he pushed through, and he had that determination, and he kept going and he kept going and he kept going. And you kind of go through the book, and what happens is, like he'll say, so I screwed up here, and that's when I realized I needed to do this. That's phase 1. Right? And then he made another mistake, and he said, and then I realized I needed to do this. That's phase 2. And by the end of the book, he's got 7 specific things that business owners need to do to pitch. And I think it's just a great book for people who are inherently uncomfortable pitching. They don't feel they're good at presenting. It's a great book.
Well, look, I mean, and to add some credibility to this book, I mean, this is a guy, can you imagine being so horrible at pitching, but you push through?
Yes.
And that pushing, that persevering allows you to raise the money, but you've only got a startup at that point. In his case, a healthcare behavioral startup.
Yeah.
But ultimately, in a few short years, he sells that company. Your company is acquired by Amazon.
Oh, right. It's like the ultimate gold ring, right?
Yeah. Right. It's reinforcement, but it came from his ability.
Maybe Google would be the ultimate gold ring. I don't know. I'm not sure. In the world of startups, maybe Google, but Amazon's pretty damn good.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, one of, if not the richest man in the world. Behind that, at the end of the day, what got him there was his ability to pitch. Yeah. And so, Adlib, you just reminded me of something, Topher. Like, here's perhaps a framework that's helpful just in the context of selling. So, give tribute whether it's due to Godfather of Direct Response, Dan Kennedy. He calls it the triangle, right? So you've got the 3 M's. You've got the message. That is, what is the pitch?
Okay.
When he's talking about marketing, he's talking about in the copy, but obviously it might be in verbal, auditory. So there's a message. There's the market, right? There's a market, i.e. who you're pitching to. Because as in the who is important.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I think Gary Halbert, legendary copywriter, says, what's the one thing, the most important thing you can have, like if you're wanting to make a sale? And he said, a starving crowd.
I was going to say a motivated client or something.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's a starving crowd, right?
Yeah.
So and then the third one is media, i.e. how do you get the message in front of them, right? So message, market, media. And Dan's argument, which I found to be very true, is if you're trying to drive more sales, the limiting factor is you are inherently weak in at least one of those three areas. And back to the worst for first, you go, okay, which of these are... You might have a pretty good pitch, and most people don't. Like, the message might be good, but you put it in front of the wrong audience.
Yeah.
Right? Or you put it in front of them the wrong way, using the wrong media.
What do you think is more painful? Having the right audience, but delivering the wrong pitch, or having the right pitch in front of the wrong audience?
Oh, for me, definitely the former, right? So I would rather have the right audience than the wrong pitch, because if you are even... a risk of contradicting what we've said in this episode, if you've got the right prospects and you can really help them, I think intent counts for a lot. I think the pitch makes a big difference, but ultimately, yeah, back to that, you can't win. You're not going to win the NBA with a basketball team full of midgets.
See, I think I might disagree with you. I would think I'd rather have the right pitch in front of the wrong audience, and the only reason I would say that the reason I push on that one because. If I'm in front of the right audience and I deliver the wrong pitch, I may ruin the opportunity to get any kind of future relationship out of that right audience. I'd almost rather have the wrong audience because at least I'm practicing a good pitch. So, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be wrong, but...
Wait. What's the Charlie Munger quote?
You're smart and I'm right. Go away and think about it. Sooner or later, you'll see that I'm right.
I think we'll have to send this to a vote with the audience. Let us know in the show notes who's right. Would you rather have the perfect pitch in front of the wrong audience or the wrong pitch in front of the perfect audience?
Well, you tell you what. Let's have a vote right now. Let's have a vote from a legend of sales. Okay. Let's go to legendary sales consultant, sales trainer Brian Tracy with the quote of the week, and let's let him decide. I asked him this.
Yeah, did you?
I asked him this in advance, and he gave me this quote.
All right, let's hear it.
So the quote of the week is: approach each customer with the idea of helping him or her solve a problem or achieve a goal, not of selling a product or service. In other words, aim to be of service. Selling is service. In other words, Topher, let me rewrite that into Topher speak. Dan's right. Get the right audience, have the right intent to serve them, and you'll be good.
Yeah, but you just changed the rules. You said the right audience and the right pitch.
I didn't.
Yeah, you
We've got this on tape.
We'll have to play it back later. I'm pretty sure you just changed the rules.
All right, so I have no idea what we're doing right now. You know what? Yeah, it's clearly time for a coffee break. So
I agree.
So on that note,
this was a good podcast though. Even the derailments were quite business related.
Have you ever had one of those dreams where you dream and it's so vivid and
is this the dream where you're an Incan god standing on a pyramid and there's thousands of naked women throwing pickles at you? Is that dream?
Yeah, we'll talk about that offline. So no, have you had a dream where everything's so vivid and clear, and you're inspired, and you wake up
and you write it down, and it's insane.
And the next morning, you're like when sunlight breaks, and you read what you wrote down, and it's inconceivable
what the
gibberish.
hell was I thinking?
My concern is that's episode.
That's right. The podcast. We're gonna watch it back later and go, what?
Yep. So there's no way out of this. Let's just wrap this baby up and say, if you want a better business, you need to be a better business owner. I hope you enjoyed that episode. 3 things you need to do now. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you do not miss an episode. Also, get on over to Amazon to get a copy of my latest book, Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity, 9.5 steps to improving your profits and cash flow. Also, join our Facebook group, the Turnover is Vanity, Profit is Sanity community, to connect with other business owners.